on the future!
No! Your history.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is D back again with another movie review. This review is for the 1986 film Cobra. Now, Cobra, this movie, this is a film that I've actually seen quite a few times in the past, but it's been probably close to a decade since I last watched it in its entirety. And I was watching some video, something put it in my mind to go ahead and watch the movie again. So I watched it last night. It's about an 87-minute movie, so a very quick watch. This was a movie that was kind of like a Sylvester Stallone vanity project, pretty much. And my understanding of it is that originally, Sylvester Stallone was supposed to be in Beverly Hills Cop, but he had his own version and his own idea of how the script and the movie should go. And the Beverly Hills Cop people, they wanted a more comedic type deal. So Sylvester Stallone and the producers, they parted ways, and of course Eddie Murphy came in as Axel Foley, and the rest is history. Beverly Hills Cop and the sequels went on to be a big movie and big franchise. But Sylvester Stallone, he decided to take the idea that he had and turn it into Cobra. Now, the movie Cobra is based on a book by a woman named, I think it's Paula Gosling, I believe, and the book was called Fair Game. So Cobra is based on that book. And my understanding of it is that later on, Fair Game actually did get made into another movie that was actually called Fair Game. That's neither here nor there. This is about Cobra. So what Cobra is about, Sylvester Stallone plays Marion Cobretti. They call him the Cobra. He's basically a very kind of stereotypical tough cop, kind of last resort cop. They only bring him in when they really want him to take care of some dirty work, and he's kind of the last resort. A lot of the traditional police officers in the unit, the force and whatnot, aren't really a fan of his kind of heavy-handed, violent tactics, but oftentimes he gets the job done and he's very necessary. So the movie opens up with him taking care of a kind of a hostage situation slash attempted mass shooter situation that's taking place in a supermarket. The movie opens up with this scenario where they call the Cobra in, and he kind of goes in alone and takes care of the situation. But what the full plot of this movie, what it's about, is there is a killer called the Night Stalker who has been killing victims and throughout, of all sorts. But in the movie, they kind of focus in on like women victims that he's killing. But according to their description, he's also killing elderly people and kids and all types of stuff. But it's not just this one guy called the Night Stalker. He's actually a part of a large, basically kind of violent, murderous cult. But this dude, the Night Stalker, is the boss of them all. He's the one that you really kind of are supposed to fear throughout the whole movie. And he's actually a very effective villain. If I remember, I'm going to try to come back to him and kind of speak on him a little bit more, because I do want to say a few things about him. But this Night Stalker and his crew, they are in the middle of committing another murder, and as they're trying to get rid of the body or move the body, a woman played by Brigitte Nielsen, in the movie her name is Ingrid, and she's just an aspiring model. She's in her Jeep just kind of going home, and she happens to pass by them and see them as they're trying to kind of get rid of this body. So she's basically a witness now. They make sure she drives off because she sees the main kind of Night Stalker villain kind of standing there, and he looks weird, looks very creepy, as he does throughout the whole movie. And he goes to kind of make a move towards her vehicle, and she speeds off, and but they do get her license plate. So she's now a target for the Night Stalker and his whole crew. And basically they do make an attempt on her. On her life, well, multiple attempts. And the police basically bring in the Cobra to basically protect her and Cobra tries to take her out of the city and whatnot, get her further away from the city to protect her, knowing that the Night Stalker crew is going to be coming for her and going to be looking for her. And I guess as I'm talking about this, I'm kind of spoiling some of the things. I won't talk about how, actually I will. This is going to be a spoiler review because the interesting things that I want to talk about are going to spoil the story. But there's actually the Night Stalker and his crew. They have somebody on the inside. This woman that she kind of seems like she might be like the romantic, the love interest of the Night Stalker, or at least she's very kind of obsessed with him devoted to him to some degree. She's also a police officer, so she has the inside scoop on the whereabouts of this witness and where the Cobra's taking her, and just so the Night Stalker, they have somebody on the inside, and she is kind of giving away the location of this witness all throughout this whole process of the Cobra trying to protect her. And so basically what this movie boils down to is the Cobra trying to protect this model, and eventually it leads to a final showdown with the Night Stalker and his cult-like crew, and eventually a one-on-one between Cobra and the Night Stalker.
We are the hunters. We kill the weak, so the strong survive.
And look, spoiler alert, Cobra wins. He kills the Night Stalker, and it's actually a very effective way that he murders the Night Stalker. He puts him on this, they're in this kind of factory type industrial abandoned industrial factory type building that that's there or whatever. So they're fighting in this location, and he ends up putting the guy on this big hook, like a hook through the guy's like lower back or something. And then the machine controlling the hook lifts the Night Stalker up and starts to carry him towards this flame. This incinerator is basically what it looks like, this big incinerator. And it's a really well shot sequence, actually, very kind of fitting for the dark, violent tone of the movie, to see the Night Stalker, and you finally get to hear him cry out in anguish in pain when he's placed on this large hook. And it's might sound morbid to say, but it's a very kind of satisfying villain death, actually, because all the pain and torment that he's been causing with a very stone cold, heartless face throughout this movie, to finally hear him, the villain, cry out in anguish and pain is actually, darkly satisfying. And so he gets this big hook, carries him towards the incinerator, and it's a very well framed shot, just all these flames behind him, and you basically see the silhouette of him and his body impaled on this very large hook. So, and that's basically, the movie basically ends like that. Night Stalker gets taken care of. Cabretti, the Cobra, gets on his bike with Brigitte Nielsen, Ingrid, the model that he's been protecting, and they've kind of built up a rapport, and so they ride off together on his motorcycle or whatever, and that's basically how the movie ends. So what I actually thought about the movie, though, I enjoyed this movie. I knew what to expect. Like I said, this wasn't my first viewing of this film, so I enjoyed it. It still was pretty much on par with what I expected from previous viewings. What I will say, though, is I kind of forgot about how many musical montages that are in this. Now, obviously, Sylvester Stallone's fingerprints are all over this movie, and he brought a lot of his Rocky sequels, his kind of tricks from those films. He brought a lot of those tricks over, because there were a couple montages, musical montages in this movie that seemed very out of place, but were very 80s. And this movie is very 80s, so at the same time, it made sense for these to be there, but also didn't, because they were a lot more kind of a happy vibe to the montage in terms of the music compared to the rest of the movie. So I forgot about these montages, and I could have done without them. It wasn't so much that I just didn't like them, it's just that they didn't kind of make they didn't fit in well with the rest of the film, especially the kind of the darkness of the film. And that's actually probably my only real true criticism of the movie. Now, this is a very 80s kind of exploitation style film, so there is some, there are some things that might come off a little cheesy, especially in the beginning. Sylvester Stallone delivers a few one-liners and things like that are pretty cheesy and pretty kind of laughable, but it's all right. And it's actually only in the kind of beginning portions of the film. I don't see so much of that in the later portions of the film. The acting kind of settles into a very kind of acceptable 80s action area where it's not over the top cheesy and whatnot, just a comfortable level of 80s stuff going on here, right? I enjoyed the dark kind of, it's dark and it's violent, but in terms of actual graphic things you see, it's not as graphic as my kind of subconscious or my memory from childhood was leading me to believe. Like, there's definitely a lot of death and murder going on, but there's not a whole lot of kind of bloody, graphic, explicit stuff, decapitations and actually seeing weapons pierce the body and things like that, blood spurts, stuff like that. There's actually not a lot of that. In fact, there's a lot of just shooting where the gun goes off and you just see the person kind of fly back. You don't actually see a lot of blood and impact spurts and things like that. So it is a violent movie just in terms of the story and what's happening, but in terms of what you actually see, it's not as bloody as certain word of mouth would lead you to believe. But it is a dark movie, and I want to return to the villain because I said I wanted to talk about the Night Stalker again. Very, very effective villain. I remember as a kid looking at this guy like, this is a creepy dude, and he's played by Brian Thompson, and this is a guy, I've seen him in other stuff. Most notably, he's in the Jean-Claude Van Damme film Lionheart. And in Lionheart, he's not necessarily a good guy, but he's not like this monstrous villain either. He's just kind of a guy in a business suit and whatnot and whatever. But he has this face that's very conducive to playing villainous roles because of the way he has these extreme indentations in his cheekbones, and just kind of his whole presence screams bad guy. And now within this movie, Cobra, it's really evident. He's younger here, and he just has a very kind of violent look to him.
You won't do it, pig. You won't shoot. Murder is against the law. You have to take me in.
There's a very psychotic disposition to him.
The court is civilized, isn't it, pig?
There's moments where they wear these kind of stocking type masks where it's almost like a pantyhose type material in a way, where it's like those masks where they cover the face and it's like your face is covered, but you can kind of see the features underneath the face, but not enough to truly make out what the person looks like. So it's this creepy type imagery of where you just see eyes and can tell there's a face underneath there, but can't really see the face. It's always an effective, to me, the kind of stocking mask thing, that kind of beige stocking mask that you pull over your face, that's been in particularly older 70s movies. That's always been kind of for how simple and simplistic the mask is, that's always been a very effectively creepy mask. But anyway, so Brian Thompson does a fantastic job as a Night Stalker. To me, still one of the more underrated main villains from a movie of this sort. Cobra in general, I don't hear this movie get talked about a lot, but in particularly the villain deserves more recognition just when you're talking about villains in these type of movies. I got to talk about the vehicle that Sylvester Stallone drives in this movie. That was actually his real, like, his own personal car, and they did create like a few stunt copies of the car, so that, you know, obviously he's not going to really destroy his own actual car. So they did create a few stunt copies of the car so they could use those in the scenes where there's, you know, lots of destruction and whatnot. Anything else I want to hit on this movie? I will say, in the car chase scene, and where Cobra for a brief moment starts driving backwards while shooting forward, at the time when this movie came out, or at least when I first saw it, which was I would assume late to early 90s is when I finally got the chance to see it. Was the first time I'd ever seen somebody drive backwards while shooting forward in an action movie. I'm not saying it hadn't happened before, but my introduction to that type of action sequence was Cobra. So it always kind of stands out for that reason. Now, you know, as an adult, whenever I see people driving backwards in action movies and shooting forward while they're driving backwards and whatnot, I automatically think of Cobra. Cobra is an underrated Sylvester Stallone film. I do think it's worth a watch if you're a fan of Sylvester Stallone, if you're a fan of these type of kind of, you know, violent 80s, you know, I guess they call them exploitation type movie. You know, those type of movies. Basically, you know, let's get tough on crime type movies. Cobra would fit in there. To me, it's a worthwhile watch, and I enjoyed it. I do recommend it. It was done by Warner Brothers and this company called the Cannon Group, and I remember their logo popping up a lot in my childhood because they were responsible for films like Bloodsport, Chuck Norris, his films like Missing in Action and Delta Force, American Ninja, I believe. So there were a lot of those kind of 80s action films that weren't completely like super mainstream, like high art films, but were just, you know, well done enough where you could see them in the theater and whatnot, but they weren't considered just these super high grade productions. So Cannon was a part of that, and I think this is one of the better films that company put out, at least out of the films that I saw. So I do recommend Cobra. Check it out. You know, there's probably some other things I could say about this movie, but I think I've already stretched the review out a little bit far, particularly considering it's only an 87-minute watch. So very short movie. It's a quick watch, and it's definitely worth your time, you know, if you're into the 80s action, 80s crime films, all of that type of stuff. So that is it for me. I will catch you on the next go round. All right.